I'm Andrea Stevens. I'm a clinical nutritionist, and my topics today are nutrition and detoxification. Nutrition, of course, is provided through the food that we eat. Many of us think that the purpose of food is to provide us with pleasure or instant gratification. Now, while that can be true to a certain extent, there is a bigger purpose for food. Food provides our cells with the energy that they need to do their many jobs. Food also provides the cells with the nutrients or raw materials that they need to do this work. Detoxification and waste removal is another important function of the body. This is accomplished within each cell. Every day, throughout the day, every cell should be eliminating waste in a timely manner for it to be working well. We can think about the cells in the body as being like little tiny factories. They need to have the raw materials that are found in the food, things like vitamins and minerals and amino acids, to do their work. And then, as a byproduct of doing the work, waste will be made. So this waste needs to be removed from the cells and eliminated from the body every day. Another source of waste in the body, or toxins, are environmental toxins. The world today is an extremely polluted and chemical-laden place. The children that are growing up today have many more chemicals getting into their bodies than children of several decades ago. Some of the chemicals and toxins are passed to the baby while the baby is in utero from the mother. Then many of them start passing into the baby on the day of birth. We can breathe in toxins through the air. We absorb them through our skin, through lotions and creams. But the biggest route of toxins coming into our body is coming in through the digestive system or through the mouth. One other source of toxins in the body are byproducts of the microorganisms that live within us. These are living organisms that are making chemicals in their body, and some of them are quite toxic. Cellular efficiency is optimized when both of these processes are functioning optimally: delivery of nutrients to the cells and removal of the waste material. The brain and all tissues of the body depend upon cellular efficiency. If the cells are working well, then it's likely that the tissues and organs of the body will all be working well. Children or individuals who have neurological or developmental problems usually have difficulty performing both of these functions well. They're very complex, difficult tasks to do, and they often don't have the resources to do them well. The gastrointestinal or digestive system plays a major role in these two functions, and that part of the body is usually not working optimally in children or adults with neurological and developmental problems. The normal, healthy GI system has multiple jobs to do. Roughly, the digestive system is a tube. Open at this end, open at that end, a couple valves and sphincters in between, but it's essentially one big long tube. In an adult, that whole digestive system is perhaps 25 to 30 feet long, of course proportionately smaller in children. The lining of the digestive system is lined with the same kind of tissue that's inside of your cheek, that moist mucous membrane tissue. That's the lining for the entire digestive system. In fact, it is the lining for all of the body openings, moist mucous membrane tissue. And there's a lot of activity happening in that membrane tissue, especially within the intestines. The anatomy of the digestive system starts with the mouth. This is where the chewing of the food occurs and the beginning of the digestion occurs. Then we swallow the food, comes down the esophagus, enters the stomach, which is located right about here. The food stays in the stomach for varying lengths of time, depending upon what we eat. Protein is primarily what's getting digested in the stomach. So if you eat if the meal has a lot of protein in it, the food will stay in the stomach for a longer period of time, 3-4 hours perhaps. If the food is perhaps totally carbohydrates, just some plants, perhaps a piece of fruit, there's very little protein in fruit, and so that food will not stay in the stomach very long, perhaps only 20 minutes, in the top, out the bottom, and then into the small intestines. The small intestines are coiled up. Diameter in an adult is perhaps about like that, and they're coiled up in this part of the body right here. And then there's the large intestine, which has three main sections: ascending, transverse descending. The large intestine or the colon, same thing, that's located in the lower abdomen, sort of below the belly button. Digestion is the breaking down of food. When we eat food, the food is in very large molecules, too complex for the cells of our body to use. So the first job of the digestive system is to break up those large molecules and compounds and turn the food into teeny tiny little particles that can then be absorbed and sent to the cells. So digestion, or the breaking down of the food, is the first job of the digestive system. And there are enzymes that are located in various parts of our digestive system that assist the body in doing that. There are enzymes in the saliva, in your mouth, in the gastric juices or stomach juices, and then the majority of them come into the food once it hits the small intestine. The pancreas is on the left side of the body, and the pancreas makes dozens of enzymes. These enzymes are very specific for different parts of the food. So certain enzymes for protein, other enzymes for fats, and yet other enzymes for carbohydrates. And they will all be released by the pancreas when food enters the small intestine. On this side of the body, on the right side of the body, we've got the liver and the gallbladder. The liver produces substances to help with the digestion or the breaking down of fats. And that substance is then stored in the gallbladder. That's bile. In that bile is a substance that helps to begin the breaking down of the fat. So that will be released into the small intestine also when the food hits that area. And then the last category of enzymes are located actually right in the lining of the small intestine. So just before the food is ready to pass from the small intestine into the bloodstream, there will be one more layer of enzymes to help in the last stage of digestion. Absorption of nutrients, or most of the absorption of nutrients, occurs within the small intestine. Some absorption occurs in the large intestine, mainly those are minerals. And also what's happening in the large intestine is where there's a huge microbial population, lots of bacteria and other microorganisms. And having a healthy ecosystem or population of these organisms in the intestines is important in order to be able to particularly extract some of the minerals from the food. Minerals like calcium and magnesium in particular. Another job of the intestines, or another function of the intestines, is that of immune support. We have more immune cells located in our intestines than in any other location of the body. Detoxification is another job of the digestive system. Detoxification does occur at a certain level in every cell of the body, but the biggest job is probably being done by the liver and the intestines. One other very important one is the close relationship between the gut or the intestines and the brain. I'll be talking a little bit more about that, but there's actually a tremendous amount of nerve cells in the intestinal lining. And the last job of the digestive system is to eliminate toxins. The majority of waste material, the majority of toxins will be eliminated through the intestines. Digestion, the first job of the digestive system, requires more energy than any other body process. More energy. Some researchers believe that the body uses 60 to 80% of its daily energy to digest food. That's really, I think, an astounding statistic. That means we've only got somewhere between 20, 30, 40% of our energy to do all the other bodily functions. And digestive enzymes are essential for this job to be done. The food that enters our mouth is in very large, complex molecules. They are of no use to the cells of the body. So digestion, or the breaking down of this food, the breaking of the chemical bonds, needs to be accomplished primarily through the use of digestive enzymes. Our body makes dozens of digestive enzymes that accomplish this. Some of the enzymes are in the saliva, in our mouth. Some are in the stomach. And the stomach, by the way, is primarily only digesting protein. If we eat a meal that's high in protein, high in meats or chicken or fish, That food may stay in the stomach for 3 to 4 hours. If the food has no protein in it, no significant protein, like a piece of fruit, for example, that food will just enter the top of the stomach and then exit perhaps in 15 or 20 minutes. There are some enzymes in the stomach, as well as hydrochloric acid, which is very important for the digestion or the breaking down of proteins. When food leaves the stomach, it enters the small intestine. The small intestine is located from about the bottom of the breast to the belly button or the navel. In an adult, the small intestine is 20 or 25 feet long, and it's all coiled up inside like a garden hose. The top part of the digestive system is where there's a lot of activity occurring. There are yet more enzymes that get mixed in with the food. The majority of them are actually coming from the pancreas, which is located right over here on the left side of the body. The pancreas makes dozens of different enzymes, and they're very specific, some for proteins, some for fats, and some for carbohydrates. So when food enters the small intestine, the pancreas will release its enzymes to mix with the food and to continue the breaking down of the food. On the right side of the body, there's the liver and the gallbladder pair or team. The liver is making a substance all day long called bile, which then gets stored in the gallbladder. In that bile is something that helps with the breaking down of fats. So again, when food enters the small intestine, the gallbladder will release some of the bile to mix with the food, and that will help again with the digestion of fats. As the food is moving down, continuing to be broken down and moving down the small intestine, there's yet one more layer of digestive enzymes that are located right within the lining of the small intestine. These enzymes are specific for carbohydrates. So when the food has all been broken down into the tiniest little particles possible, then it gets absorbed through the wall or the lining of the small intestine and passes into the bloodstream. From the blood, all these various nutrients can then be delivered to the cells. Now, all of our food is intended to be completely digested, with the exception of some fibers. And I just want to repeat that because this is important. We are intended to digest or completely break down all of the food that enters our stomach, with the exception of fibers. The absorption of nutrients occurs mostly within the top of the small intestine. Some nutrients are absorbed in the colon or the large intestine, which is located in the lower abdomen, pretty much below the belly button. Also down in the large intestine, there are a large number of microorganisms or bacteria, and the presence of a healthy population is essential in order to do the absorption of some of the minerals that will be occurring there. One other thing about the absorption of the nutrients is that, of course, the amount of nutrients that are absorbed will depend not only upon the efficiency of the digestive system, but the health of the small intestinal lining, and also, of course, the quality of the food that we eat. Certain foods, depending upon the way that they were raised, will have more nutrients in them than others. And so if the end purpose of eating the food is to deliver the nutrients to the cells, we want there to be a lot of nutrients in the food. The small and large intestines have an extremely important job to be a barrier. There are certain substances that we may ingest with our food. There could be pesticides that were grown, that were sprayed on the fruits and the vegetables that we eat. There could be hormones or antibiotics that were given to the animals that we eat. There can be chemicals in our water. Lots of different toxins and chemicals can come in with the food and with the water. These are of no use to the body. In fact, they're harmful to the body. And if the lining of the small and the large intestine is intact and strong, these substances will simply pass out of the body with the next bowel movement. So having a strong, intact, healthy lining to the small and large intestines is extremely important, so that these substances do not get into the interior of the body. As long as they stay within the intestines, they're within that tube and they'll just pass out of the body. Besides the toxins that can come in with our food, some toxins are produced by the microorganisms that live within us or that perhaps get ingested with our food. Living microorganisms are making chemicals and compounds in their bodies all day long. They get released into the intestinal environment, and some of these can be very toxic. There is a very close relationship also between the brain and the gut, and this is known as the gut-brain connection. There have been a couple of books written about this very thing. We have more neurons or nerve cells in our intestines than even in our spinal cord. In the intestines also is where we manufacture several important neurotransmitters. We have quite a few neurotransmitters that are either manufactured or located in the intestines. Serotonin, for example, that's that happy brain chemical that a lot of us feel we maybe don't have enough of. 95 to 98% of the serotonin is actually located in the intestines. We have other neurotransmitters that are found there. Some of them are dopamine, GABA, G-A-B-A, acetylcholine, and glutamate. The immune system is also part of the intestines, or the intestines are part of the immune system. About 70% of all the immune cells in our body are located, guess where? Yes, the intestines. Most people have no idea that there's so much happening in the intestines, but there is. They're a very important part of the body. So these immune cells are located in the lining of the small intestine. What's also, the intestines in general, what's also happening in the intestines is we are host to a huge population of microorganisms. We have in a healthy adult perhaps 2 kilograms or 4 pounds of microorganisms that live in primarily the large intestine. And there is a very close relationship between that primarily bacteria that live there and the immune cells. They actually send chemicals back and forth, have chemical communication back and forth. Detoxification is a process that's occurring daily, and at a certain level it's being done within each cell of the body. However, the liver, again located over here on the right-hand side, perhaps does more of the detoxification than any other part of the body. The liver is responsible for performing a very complex two-stage or two-phase detoxification process. In order for the liver to do that job well, it requires many, many nutrients. So if you want the liver to be able to detoxify the many different toxins and chemicals that find their way into the body, digestion and absorption of nutrients has to be occurring first because the liver has to be fed properly in order to do its job well. The end products of detoxification, the majority of them will leave the body through the intestines. However, there will also be end products of detoxification or waste material leaving the body through the urine, through the skin in the perspiration, and through the lungs with the air that we exhale. So there are 4 avenues of elimination from the body. Bowel movements do contain the majority of the waste material, however. Normal bowel movements should be daily. I want to repeat that, daily. They could even be 2 or 3 times a day, and that would be fine, but at least once a day. They should be soft, bowel movements should be easy, and they should be formed. The stool should look a little bit like a banana or a sausage. And there should not be a particularly strong odor to the bowel movements. Now, I know that they're never going to smell like roses, but there should not be a particularly really strong odor. That usually says that food is not being digested properly, and this incompletely digested food is remaining in the intestines, and what happens to it is it kind of rots or decays. And that very strong odor can be a result of rotting or decaying food in the intestines. It also could be a result of an imbalance of the bacteria or the organisms that live in the intestines. Most of the children that I see and the adults who have neurological or developmental problems have some degree of dysfunction in the digestive system. It's simply too much work to be done for someone who has some type of neurological challenge. So digesting food properly usually does not occur in these children, nor does detoxification occur ideally. When I talk about GI dysfunction or weak digestion or problems with the digestive system, many parents don't quite see that. Their child perhaps doesn't have any overt digestive symptoms. There's no reflux, there's no vomiting, there's no belly aches, there's no diarrhea, and so the parents think child's digestive system is fine. But I don't think that that is the case. Even in the absence of those overt digestive symptoms, I think that there's an inherent weakness, there's some degree of malfunction or poor function that's happening in the digestive system. The common problems that can be occurring are incomplete digestion, dysbiosis, which is a fancy word for meaning an imbalance of organisms, something called leaky gut, which I'll talk a little bit more about, food sensitivities, which are very common in the children that I see, and then of course poor nutrient delivery to the cells. If you can't digest your food very well, you're not going to get all the nutrients out of the food delivered to the cells. And toxin buildup in the cells. If, for example, a child has constipation or has problems with the lining of the intestines, toxins can get reabsorbed and can start building up in the cells. Incomplete digestion is very common, not only in the children actually who have neurological or developmental problems, but often in other family members, including their parents. It's really a common thing today for most of us, perhaps, to not be completely digesting our food. When the food is not completely digested, some of it will stay in the intestines in a partially digested state. These particles will be too large to be absorbed and too large to be of use to the cells in the body. So this partially digested food stays in the intestines. It moves on down through the many, many feet of intestines. This could take hours. And remember, the inside of the intestines are warm, like 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And it's moist and it's dark. And we've got food in that kind of an environment for hours and hours and hours. So what do you think happens to it? It rots, it decays, it putrefies. And this undigested food or partially digested food actually feeds some of the undesirable organisms that live in the intestines. This microbial population that we have within us should be comprised of about 85% bacteria, 85% good bacteria or beneficial bacteria that help us out by making compounds and chemicals that we get to use. But there's approximately 15% of organisms in a healthy individual that are not so desirable. And if we do not digest our food completely, this rotting or decaying food becomes a food source for the undesirable organisms and encourages their growth and their proliferation. A byproduct of incomplete digestion is often bloating and gas. So most individuals who have excessive bloating and gas have incomplete digestion and probably dysbiosis or an imbalance of organisms. Too many of the bad guys, perhaps not enough of the good guys. This undigested food causes another problem besides feeding the undesirable organisms. It also irritates and inflames the intestinal lining. As I said earlier, we are meant to completely digest all of our food with the exceptions of fibers. These fibers that we don't digest higher up stay in the intestines and serve two functions. The fibers will move down through the intestines and act a little bit sort of like broom bristles, clean the walls of the intestines and collect the debris and help it to pass out of the body. also gives form and substance to the bowel movements. But the fibers do one other thing, and that's serve as a food source for the good bacteria, the beneficial bacteria that live within us. This population of good bacteria is really essential not only for a healthy digestive system, not only for good daily elimination, but also for detoxification and for our immune system. We are intended to have this ecosystem of organisms living within us, and it's very complex, it's very dynamic, and it's changing. So when we don't digest all of our food, we feed the bad guys, the bad organisms, encourage their growth, and we irritate the lining of the intestines. Think about it. There's rotting or decaying food in the intestines. That will irritate and inflame the lining, which is also the home to the microorganisms. That's where they're living. It's also where some of these neurotransmitters are located. It's also where the immune cells are located. So that whole terrain can get disturbed and irritated. Symptoms which may or may not be present when we don't completely digest our food, and remember I said may or may not be present, would be excessive burping or belching, excessive gas. We all have gas every day. We all do make gas. It is a normal process in the body. But the amount of gas, it should really be, the gas shouldn't be noticeable. We really should be pretty much unaware of it. When we are aware of it, either because of the noise or the odor, it's usually excessive. It's usually a result of incomplete digestion and probable dysbiosis, too many bad bacteria. We may have belly aches. We may have constipation. You may see visible pieces of undigested food in the stool, and there may be a really, really strong odor to the stool. Dysbiosis, as I said, means an imbalance of organisms. In a healthy individual, a person with a healthy digestive system, we have perhaps 500 to maybe more than 1,000 different species of organisms that live within us. This is a fairly new field of study, a fairly new field of science, and there's more and more information that comes out every year about that, but at least 500 different species of organisms. About 85% of them should be what we call good bacteria or beneficial bacteria. These good bacteria, for example, one of them is called Lactobacillus acidophilus, and you've maybe heard acidophilus, you've heard that name because that's what's found in yogurt. So some people know when they buy yogurt, they want to look at the label and make sure that it says contains live cultures or contains live acidophilus, because that's one of the great virtues of eating yogurt. You're eating this good bacteria which is supposed to be residing in our intestines. About 15% of the organisms are less desirable. These could be other bacteria that don't do good things for our bodies. It could be yeast organisms. Some of you have perhaps heard of yeast or candida. We all have yeast living within us, but it should be quite a small percentage of the total organisms that live within us. We also may have parasites, worms. This is increasingly common throughout people all around the world, not just in third world countries. Now, all of these various organisms are forming a living, dynamic ecosystem. The good beneficial bacteria are making compounds or chemicals within their bodies that get released into the environment that actually help us. One of the things I talked about before was the close relationship between the good bacteria and the immune system. They are very intimately related, and there's cellular communication going back and forth all day long. The good bacteria help us to detoxify. The good bacteria will release substances that can kill some of the bad bacteria or the bad organisms. The good bacteria help to get the minerals in particular out of our food and absorbed. And the good bacteria also make a compound which gets released into the intestines and is then used by the cells of the intestines to keep its lining strong and healthy. When there are either too few of the good bacteria or too many of the undesirable organisms, an imbalance occurs. That's dysbiosis. And then we can have too many toxins or bad chemicals coming out of the bad organisms, and these can further irritate and inflame the lining of the digestive system. Antibiotics are one common cause of dysbiosis. When we take antibiotics for perhaps an ear infection or a throat infection, the antibiotics aren't only killing the bad bacteria that are in the ear or the throat, but they kill many of the good bacteria in the intestines. In someone who's had antibiotics repeatedly, often what happens is that most of the good bacteria that should be residing in the intestines get killed off, and commonly the yeast overgrow. Yeast are not affected by antibiotics. Yeast do not get killed by antibiotics. So if all the good bacteria, which are supposed to be the majority of organisms, get killed off by antibiotics and other drugs also, steroids do the same thing, the yeast commonly will overgrow. Leaky gut is a kind of a common name, well, common to me and some of the people that I know, for a more medical term that's called increased intestinal permeability. When some of these processes go awry that I have been discussing, when the food is not completely digested, when the organisms are out of balance, the lining of the intestines becomes irritated and inflamed, and tiny little holes can develop in the lining. This makes the lining more permeable and allows some of the toxins that are in the intestines to leak through the lining and get into the bloodstream. This is sometimes referred to as auto-intoxication. Now that means that the toxins that we're wanting to be eliminated in the next bowel movement get reabsorbed. They pass through the lining, get into the bloodstream, and then they can travel anywhere in the body, including the brain, and cause all kinds of problems. Some symptoms that you might see in your child, if your child has leaky gut, would be problems with sleep, problems with concentration, with mobility, with balance, with language, with eye contact. It could be just about anything. Behavior. There could be all types of neurological mannerisms that could be created, even seizures. Food sensitivities are a common result of the problems that occur that I've just finished discussing: incomplete digestion, dysbiosis, and leaky gut. With food sensitivities, what occurs is that the food is not completely digested. So let's say, for example, gluten. Gluten is a protein molecule that is found in wheat and in other grains, and gluten is actually very hard to digest, very hard to break down. In many of the children that we see, they cannot completely digest the gluten. So the gluten molecule remains in the intestines in a partially digested state. It's been broken down partway, but not completely all the way down into amino acids, which is what is supposed to occur. So this partially digested piece of wheat or gluten stays in the intestines. If there is some leaky gut at some location, it's possible that the gluten molecule can pass through the lining of the intestines and get into the blood. This is inappropriate. It is not supposed to be getting absorbed. It's really too large of a particle to be of any use to the cells of the body. If it encounters an immune cell on the way into the bloodstream, which is very common since we have so many immune cells in the lining of the intestines, if it encounters the immune cell, it's the job of the immune cells to protect the interior of the body from foreign invaders, and it would consider an incompletely digested piece of food to be a foreign invader. So that immune cell could produce any one of a number of chemicals that would sort of protect the body from this gluten. This could be resulting in a food allergy or a food sensitivity. There are blood tests that can be done. that can determine the presence of a food allergy or a food sensitivity. And what these tests are showing is if there are certain immune chemicals that have been produced against a certain food. But it's possible for the gluten molecule to slip into the bloodstream and not encounter an immune cell along the way. And we can have food intolerances, problems with tolerating a food, even when the immune system is not involved. There are so many different ways that partially digested food can cause problems within the body. And there's no one test that can show the presence of all of those different ways that it can occur. Possible symptoms of food sensitivities or intolerances are the ones that I just mentioned earlier. Problems with sleep, with balance, with communication, with mobility, with behavior, with learning, with concentration, even seizure activity or other extreme neurological manifestations. One of the things that we're going to try to do here at the Family Hope Center is to strengthen or repair your child's digestive system. We accomplish this through encouraging you to provide your child with a chemical-free diet and pure water also as much as possible. The Stage 1 diet, which I will discuss a little bit more, is a dietary program that is specifically designed to help strengthen or repair the digestive system. Nutritional supplements are a third avenue. Nutritional supplements would be recommended, some of them specifically to help the digestive system do its job better, and some of them will be to increase nutrient delivery to the cells. And then lastly, the avoidance of all environmental toxins and chemicals. Toxins and chemicals will put a greater burden on the child's ability to detoxify, but it also puts a greater burden on the digestive system itself and irritates the digestive lining. The Stage 1 diet is the first of 3 stages. At the Family Hope Center, we have Stage 1, Stage 2, and Stage 3 diet programs. All of the new children are given the Stage 1 diet with some modifications depending upon what degree of dysfunction we think might be present. One of the primary features of the Stage 1 diet is to make it easy for your child to digest her or his food. First of all, we're going to ask you to avoid certain foods that are difficult to digest. You may already be suspecting that gluten and dairy are at the top of the list, and indeed they are. Wheat has this gluten molecule in it that is very difficult to digest. Dairy has a couple of molecules in it that are very difficult to digest. We're going to ask you to not let your child have any gluten or any dairy for at least a period of time. There will be several other foods that we'll ask you to avoid, either because they're difficult to digest or because they are likely to cause some type of irritation or inflammation of the digestive system. We want you to provide your child with nutrient-dense, easy-to-digest foods. We'd also like you to try to avoid all chemicals and artificial additives as much as possible. We want to provide for stable blood sugar levels throughout the day. This will ensure that your child has good energy on a macro level, but also on a cellular level. And the Stage 1 nutrition program is also going to support good daily bowel elimination. Nutritional supplements are also an important part of our program. Some of the commonly recommended supplements that we may recommend for your child would be a multivitamin or mineral. It might be a chewable tablet, depending upon the needs of your child. It might be a powder, or it might be a capsule. The multivitamin and mineral will have a large variety of vitamins and minerals that are all important for various cellular processes to occur. We also might recommend some additional calcium and magnesium. Now, we single out these 2 minerals because even a high quality multiple vitamin and mineral usually can't contain enough calcium and magnesium. Our body needs more calcium and magnesium just quantity wise than any other mineral. Fish oil is one type of omega-3 fatty acids, and fish oil will contain DHA and EPA, which perhaps you've heard about or read about, very important for the brain and the nervous system. Vitamin D is a vitamin, specific vitamin that again usually isn't found in a large enough quantity in the multi, and so we may recommend 1 or 2 drops of a liquid vitamin D. Digestive enzymes are a very important supplement that most of the children will have recommended, and this will just support the digestive system, again ensure that they are completely digesting their food. And then probiotics and prebiotics are the last 2 that are commonly recommended. Probiotics is the name that we give for the good bacteria in a powdered or capsule form. Typically these probiotic supplement is kept in the refrigerator. While the bacteria are kept cold, they're sleeping, they're dormant, and they'll last longer. Once you swallow the probiotics in a powdered form, generally a powdered form, the probiotics or the good bacteria will wake up. They'll get inside this nice, warm, moist body, and they'll wake up and they'll travel on down to the intestines and find themselves a home. Prebiotics is a type of fiber product that feeds the good bacteria. And this is a kind of a sweet tasting powder. It actually tastes pretty good. And we're going to ask you to give prebiotics and probiotics every day. If you can get some of these little measuring spoons, it might be very helpful. Within the US, these are common. I know in European countries and some South American and Latin American countries, you don't use these measuring spoons very much. But if you can manage to get a set of these, or perhaps some measuring spoons from a pharmacy or an apothecary, it can help you in the measuring out of some of the powders that we might recommend. We will ask you to do a urine test on your child every 6 months. What we're looking for in this urine test is the presence of heavy metals or toxic metals. Metals like mercury, lead, arsenic, cadmium. These are present, unfortunately, in most of the children that we see. It's not especially that the children are being exposed to more pollution than other children, it's just they can't detoxify. As the pollution enters their body every day, their ability to detoxify it and eliminate it is usually not very strong. And so the body stores these various heavy metals as well as other kinds of chemicals and toxins. When you do the urine test, we will give you a little envelope with some capsules in it, and we'll ask you to give the child the capsules the morning of the urine collection. If your child cannot swallow capsules, you simply open them up, dump the powder in a little spoonful of food, and give it to the child that way. When the child takes these capsules, what they're going to do for a few hours is pull the metals or the heavy metals, the toxic metals out of storage, out of the storerooms, and put them into circulation for a period of time. Then the kidneys will filter the urine, and you'll collect the urine in a container like this. This is going to be a 6-hour urine collection. So you're going to give the capsules with breakfast, you wait 2 hours, give the capsules time to work, and then you begin collecting the urine. So for 6 hours you need to collect the urine, put it in this container, and then at the end of that 6 hours, you will also have a little box like this, and you will take some of the urine from this big container and pour it into this small plastic tube. And this is what will then get sent to the laboratory for testing. Now we'll go over all of that with you on the day of your appointment. I just wanted to give you an overview now. The lab results will come to us. We will review them. The doctor and I will both review them, and then we will send you a copy of the lab results along with our recommendations. I wanted to just tell you about Epsom salts, which is something you can start anytime, and anybody can do this. That is, put them in a bath and take a bath with them. Epsom salts are also known as magnesium sulfate crystals. They're commonly found in grocery stores and drugstores and discount stores in the U.S. Not always so easy to find in other countries. So if you're in the U.S., you might want to buy it while you're here. A bag like this, which is about 4 pounds or 2 kilograms, costs only about $4. So it's really quite inexpensive. The way to do an Epsom salts bath, which is a gentle detoxifying bath, is to put 1/2 to 2 cups of the salts in a tub of warm water, very warm water, and then have your child be as completely submerged in the water as possible for about 15 to 20 minutes. This is going to, your body will absorb some of the magnesium, some of the sulfur, which are both very helpful in helping the body to detoxify, and provide your child with a nice, gentle, yet effective way to increase his or her ability to detoxify. It also has a very calming effect in some children. So some parents like to give their child an Epsom salts bath at bedtime, or even in the middle of the day if your child is perhaps hyperactive or particularly wound up. You might find letting them do an Epsom salts bath calms them down. Environmental toxins are such a big topic. Trying to help your child avoid exposure to the many, many chemicals that are present in his or her environment. It's going to be an ongoing process. We will give you a couple of resources to help you. We'll give you some specific suggestions. But again, it's this ongoing process. Besides the food, which should be as chemical-free as possible, you want the child's personal care products like soaps and shampoos and lotions to all be as chemical-free as possible. And you want laundry detergents and cleaning products to all be as natural as possible. You particularly want to minimize or preferably completely avoid the use of fragrances. Fragrances is a category of chemical that is quite hard for a child's body to detoxify. So when I say fragrance, I mean not only perfume or cologne that the mother may wear or aftershave that the father may wear, but that category that is called fragrance or perfume, which will be on the label of many, many different personal care products. So please be careful with that category of chemical. It's hard for the bodies to detoxify. Another very common item in households that presents a problem for children, and actually for all of us, are dryer sheets or fabric softeners. Dryer sheets like Bounce, fabric softeners, the chemical that's put into those products, even if it's a fragrance-free product, the chemical that's used to soften the clothing and prevent the static cling is another chemical that's very hard for the body to detoxify and eliminate. So please don't use those products. There's a great website that you can go to for help in identifying some of the more common toxins in the environment and to help you choose some products that are safer than others. And that website is www.ewg.org. EWG stands for Environmental Working Group. It's a nonprofit organization that has done a lot of research, and everything's available for free right on their website. They have a wonderful list of the best foods to buy, organic, and I think they call that the dirty dozen list. They're the 12 fruits and vegetables that are most contaminated by pesticides. So you really want to try to use your organic food dollars to buy those particular 12 fruits and vegetables in an organic form. It also, that particular website will give you information about fish and which fish are highest in mercury and other pollution. Now, we do have a copy of both of those lists in our nutrition manual, which you would have received when you took the seminar. Part of that great big thick book that you got at the seminar contains all these pages of the nutrition manual. So there are resources in here, but we also give you resources to go online. Another organization that could be of great help to you, particularly with the food, is the Weston A. Price Foundation. And their website is www.wapf.org. And again, this is all written down for you. This is another nonprofit educational organization, and it can help you locate sources for organic foods and food that has been grown in a very responsible manner in your own geographical location. Electromagnetic fields is another form of pollution. Electromagnetic fields, or EMFs, refers to that kind of radiation that's given off by electrical and electronic devices. The children that we see seem to be particularly vulnerable to these electromagnetic fields, some of them markedly so. It's believed that these electromagnetic fields can disrupt cellular processes, cellular membrane permeability, and again, it can have very marked effects on some of the children. Devices that are particularly problematic are cell phones, computers, hair dryers, televisions, and video games. To implement the nutrition program can be daunting to some, and yet other families say it's the easiest thing to do. It's a very individual response that families seem to have. I guess it depends upon your comfort with cooking, your previous education about what kinds of foods are healthy and what kinds of foods aren't healthy. But just as every child is different, every family is different. And the way that you decide to implement the nutrition program might vary from the way that the next family decides to do it. You might want to start with, for example, just eliminating gluten or gluten and dairy, and then take things step by step. Many families decide that they just want to do the whole thing all at once. So again, that's your choice. Of course, the sooner you do it all at once, the sooner you can expect good results to occur. Another decision you're going to have to make is whether you're going to simply just feed the one child this way or have the whole family eat this way. I can tell you that the families who decide that the whole family is going to eat this way for a period of time usually report back that every single family member feels better. Often food sensitivities are discovered in siblings where none was ever suspected. That's a really common thing I hear back. Almost always the parents report back that they themselves feel so much better. So while the nutrition program is certainly aimed at your child, we really want you to encourage the consideration of having the whole family eat this way, because the parents so often are overworked, overstressed, and malnourished themselves. They need this program really as much as the children need it. It can be extremely helpful if you can get into the habit of making a weekly menu. Make that menu out in advance and then post it on your refrigerator. Use a little magnet, hang it on your refrigerator, and make sure it's there so that Monday morning when you wake up, you just look at that menu and see, okay, here's what I'm making for breakfast today. And be consistent. It is so important to be consistent. We have a couple of cookbooks or food-related books that could be of help to you. This one is referred to in the nutrition manual. This is called Nourishing Traditions by Sally Fallon. Sally Fallon, who wrote this book, is the same individual who's the director of the organization that I told you about, Weston A. Price Foundation. there's so much information in this book. There's recipes, but there's also so much information about good old-fashioned, natural, pure, unadulterated foods, including the proper way to cook certain foods. Now, she does have recipes in here that contain gluten and contain dairy. So, of course, you're going to have to skip those recipes or skip those ingredients, although at some point in the future, you might be able to use all the ingredients. Another cookbook or a book that has many recipes in it, I don't have an example of here today, but it's called The Body Ecology Diet. You can purchase that online. I believe Amazon.com has it. And all the recipes in there will be appropriate for the stage 1 diet. It is a gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free, low-sugar, chemical-free eating program. And the recipes that are at the back of the book are quite tasty. A lot of families like them, so that's another good resource for you. One last book I just want to show you is called The Gut and Psychology Syndrome. This is written by Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride. She had a child who was diagnosed with autism, and as a physician, she really knew nothing about it, and she started teaching herself. This book will have some recipes in it, which will also be appropriate, but some of the best value of this book, I think, is in the first 50 pages, where she gives, I think, a wonderful description of much of what I've been trying to describe to you about the relationship between the gut and the brain, or she says psychology. But the behavior and the nervous system is so closely related, and moods to the gut. And she has a wonderful description with all kinds of cute little drawings at the first part of this book. So implementing the nutrition program will be the first step that you'll be asked to do when you go home. The way that you decide to approach this is going to result in either a smooth transition or a rocky transition. Trying to be upbeat, trying to be positive about it, just trying to look upon this as something new and exciting to learn, and being consistent can help not only your child, but your entire family. Thank you.